So Christina has an impressive history of making things happen. Most recently, she led the creation of the social networking and gaming platform as general manager of Zynga.com. And before Zynga, she held the senior positions at MySpace, LinkedIn, and Yahoo, back when Yahoo was pretty neat, she says. Currently, she lives now the slow life, advising startups, teaching, and of course, speaking at wonderful conferences like World IA Day. So thank you so much, Christina, for kicking us off and being our keynote.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me here. I think there's a pretty other neat thing that I did a few years back, which was found the Information Architecture Institute back when it was called Asilomar, with a couple people in the room, and Lou Rosenfeld. As well, I really want to thank the World IA Day for having a code of conduct. Recently, I've been out promoting the importance of creating safe spaces so that we can have many, many diverse voices, and I'm really impressed that the Institute has embraced that. This should be a place for people of all colors, creeds, genders, and in San Francisco we have a large number of genders. We support everybody's voices and everybody coming together. So once again, thank you guys so much for making this a safe and varied place. Okay, so if you have a strange urge to follow me, I have a very silly last name. I'm very findable. So you should be able to track me down pretty well. As well, I want to thank all the amazing librarians who make their images available on Flickr so that I can make a deck. All the references will be up when I put this on SlideShare. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but design is king, right? Like there's a lot of news out right now. Everybody's talking about how important design is. Even information architecture is making a comeback. There's information architects at Apple and Facebook now. IA is back. Design is back. It's considered important. So, you know, why aren't I rich? That's what you're saying to yourself. Like, design's so damn important. Where the hell is my flying car, right? You know? Where's my seat at the table? I gotta say, this is a table I'd like to have a seat at. These women look awesome. So why is this not happening? You know, and maybe it's because we have a servant mentality. You know, we're here, we've always been helping others. Should we be out there like using the advice that I see all the time at talks, which is mesmerize them. Let's be Rasputin. We can use the powers of our magical eyes. Or advice I heard recently, which is use judo. You know, they want this, but we'll just flip them around, those business people, and we're going to give them that instead. Oh yeah, let's speak the language of business. Maybe if we disguise ourselves in our suits, that we'll pass, right? You know, I've heard all this. I've even tried it. Like I went and read HBR and I did a bunch of business books. But you know, I think that the skills we have as designers are exactly the skills we need for this. I'm gonna push this back a little bit. Well, I guess I'll just keep climbing over it. So I've gotten really into conceptual models recently, and I built a conceptual model around how we can actually negotiate and how we can actually get our ideas across. And this is the model, and I'm gonna take you through it. So the first part is you have to get good with yourself. You have to make peace with yourself and what you're good at. So I'm going to ask you guys, if you're not near someone, can you get near someone? Some of you can just turn around. I think you guys can just turn around. But find somebody, because this is going to be a collective thing, okay? And I want you to turn to that person and share something you're really proud of at work or prep school. A really proud moment where you really thought you were at your very best at work. So think about that moment. You were just amazing at work, and share it with the person sitting next to you, okay? We're just gonna take 3 minutes to do this. Make friends, you people in back. Make friends. If you haven't already, switch. The talker becomes the listener becomes the talker. Okay. Did you guys find it hard to blow your own horn? Was it a little tricky? You know, it's funny because when I first had a management consultancy with my friend John Sapolsky, he said, okay, you know, when clients ask you how much you charge, you have to say $250 an hour. This was some years back, and I couldn't do it without giggling. I'd be like, I don't know, I can't say that out loud. You have to get good at saying how amazingly awesome you are, and you have to do it in a comfortable way, not a proud way, but, well, a proud way, yes, but not a braggart way, you know? You just have to be good, saying, yeah, I actually am this good, and yes, I actually cost this much. And getting used to that is a really important thing for you. So I have a goal now for you listeners. You've been listening to these other people. You each listen to each other. I want you to take a second, and I want you to say, what is this person's superpower? You just listened to a story about how proud they were. What was their superpower? So I'm just going to give you a quick 1 minute to tell the person next to you, what did you hear that they are amazing at, okay? So we're just taking a quick minute. Tell the person you listen to, so tell each other what their superpowers are. Go. And switch. Make sure you both hear each other's superpowers. Shh. Okay. Okay. Was anybody surprised by their superpower? No? Were you happy? Okay. Hey, let's get some share. What's your superpower?
My superpower, as said by Dory, is my ability to work with diverse group of people and distill information out of data.
Wow, that's a pretty good superpower. Okay, we got another superpower over here. What's your...
We just met. We didn't get that far.
Oh, you didn't get that far? She's like, oh, no, I know my superpower.
No, I was going to say that I know Deborah's superpower, which is she got a group of 30 accountants excited about web content, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
At least for a day. I don't know if it lasted.
A day is enough. How about over here? You got some superpowers over here?
Let's see. My superpower, according to Allison, is being able to communicate with different groups of people in different ways, learning the local language, basically.
I'm hearing a lot of great management superpowers. You guys need to be upwardly mobile. How about one more?
She said, she used a word that I had never used for myself, which was negotiate. I'm a good negotiator. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's one of my favorite superpowers. Thank you very much. Thanks, folks. You sound like a very powerful room of underpaid people. So you really do need to know this stuff. You need to know your value. So you should have a piece of paper and a pen, or you can use your own paper if you feel constrained by the Post-it note. But I'd like you to quickly draw out this triangle for yourself. And what I want you to know is I want to know your needs, your wants, and your value. And your superpower is the beginning of getting a sense of what your value is, okay? This is called a Sierpinski triangle, if you want a fancy new vocabulary word to impress clients with. I always like the word Sierpinski triangle. It's actually fractal. Fun fact, okay? So if you have a quick triangle drawn, we're going to fill it in. So the first thing we have to do is what your needs are, right? What do you actually need to live on? So I teach a class called Designer is Entrepreneur. And one of the classes, which is always the one that freaks out my students, is the one where we figure out your own personal burn rate. So you write down, don't write down your last salary, you would write down your rent, you would write down your car payments, you write down every single thing that costs you money. Figure out what that is. What is the very minimum that it costs you to be alive in the world? And I will bet very few people in this room actually know this number of what it really does cost them to live. And it's very educational because it allows you to take less money to do a passion project. It lets you know what does it really take to be in the world, as opposed to just, you know, because I don't know about you, but my money just sort of wanders off if I'm not careful, mostly to Amazon for books, but also, you know, dinners and stuff. So it's really good to know what does it actually cost to be alive in the world. What does it take to keep you running? The next one is your wants. You know, you would fill in the second part of the triangle with what do you really want? Do you want a better title? Do you want more meaningful work? Do you want enough money for retirement so you can stop worrying about that? Like, what do you actually want from your work? This is another question that people rarely take the time to ask themselves. What really matters? I recommend you stack rank it and boil it down to a single sentence that can fit in your little triangle. But as always, start with a big list and narrow it down. And then your superpower, your value. Why are you the most extraordinary person that anybody would ever hope to hire? What makes you so special? There are so many people out there who can organize information and make sense of it. Okay, maybe not. So that's, you know, just caring about information architecture is already pretty great, but if you can actually work with data and humans, that's fairly extraordinary. You need to own your fate, and it starts with knowing what you are all about. The next is you're going to try to understand the person you're going to talk to. First, we seek to understand. We understand ourselves, we understand them, and then we can start talking. So we're going to do another little interview, okay? And what I would like you to do, if you can switch to somebody else, that would be great. If you can't because you're in the sparsely populated areas, I understand that. But I'd like you to ask each other, what looks like a good day and what looks like a bad day, okay? Can you think of a good day and a bad day? And we're just going to do another little interview. Take notes if you feel needs, okay? Just a quick 2 minutes. Switch. If you haven't switched, switch and listen to the other person. Okay. So here's the question for you as you listen to the other person. What makes that person win? What will make them awesome? You know, this is a question. When you think of the worst day, what went wrong that shouldn't have gone wrong? When you think of the best day, what went right that should always go right? These are the values and these are the conversations that you should be having with the person you want something from. You should have it with your boss. You should have it with your product partner. You should have it with your engineer. What makes this other person win? And how could you make them win? You've just spent some time listening to each other. You know, there are some patterns there, I'm going to bet. Is it a day when they finally get to be creative? If it's an engineer, maybe it's a day that they didn't get interrupted 15 times by some designer who wanted something from them. Maybe they just want time to do really good work. Maybe as a designer, you just want time to do really good work. When the boss is, maybe it's when they don't have to go back and forth and explain everything 15 times, you know? But by listening to each other, you can really understand what this other person's about. What does success look like? What does failure look like? What are they afraid of? That worst day is always interesting because it's full of scary things. Fear is tough. In fact, there are times when somebody cannot listen to you no matter what. They literally have their ears folded closed. And that is when they have a prejudice, when they're afraid, and when they're in pain. So what do they think of you as a designer? Do they think you don't understand the business model? You're this pretty little thing that just wants to make prettiness? Do they have a prejudice against you? Can you break that prejudice? Unfortunately, designers are seen as semi-artists, you know? So is this something that you're going to have to overcome before they can see you as a real person? Are they scared? Are they terrified that the boss of the boss is about to cut them out, right? You know, the reality is that there's a wonderful book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers that I definitely recommend. And it turns out zebras don't get ulcers because they're only scared if a lion is chasing them. We humans can imagine lions. We're scared when we're afraid of our tax bills. We're afraid of what might happen tomorrow. We're afraid of layoffs. We invent our lions. So the person you're talking to, you have to tame those lions before you can talk to them, or wait until they've managed to tame them. Wait till they're calm enough to hear you. And finally, if they're in pain, nobody can hear you when they're in pain. You don't want to go and try and negotiate at the moment where they've just suddenly had their hours cut, when they're in agony. So make sure that the person you're talking to is emotionally healthy before you try to have a conversation. Okay, the other piece of the puzzle is environment. What is the environment in which you guys are both working in? So I had a funny realization the other day. When I was a kid, you know how you have the mythology of your parents? I remember my dad telling me this crazy story. So my mother was raised Christian Scientist. And I don't know if you know about the Christian Scientists, but their whole theory is illness is caused when you are apart from God, and the way you get better is to read the Bible and Science and Health and Keys to the Scriptures. At least the branch my mother belonged to. I would hate to represent the entire religion. But an odd thing happened. When she was in school, she was able to skip all science classes because her religion allowed her to skip science classes. And my mother's a very brilliant woman. She took the bar twice. She's a fantastic lawyer. She's very powerful. But the universe is a little scary for her. She doesn't really understand, she kind of gets lightning is weather, but beyond that, why it's happening is a mystery. Earthquakes, she gets that they happen in their nature, but she doesn't really understand tectonic plates crashing against each other. Like the entire universe, bad things happen, and she's not exactly sure why they occur. So I'm teaching at an art school now, and I went to art school, and I realized something. There are no business classes in art school. There are no accounting classes in art school. There's not so many science classes either, but, and I suddenly realized there are all these designers who go into the world and bad things happen to them. Layoffs happen or the project is killed. And much like my mother, they don't really understand why these things are happening. They're lacking some very basic information to understand why the universe is so darn random. So, what is your company's business model? How does it work? We are very, very lucky. This gentleman named Alex Osterwalder wrote a great book called The Business Model Canvas, and it's very, very design-friendly. In fact, it promotes design to business people. And I've often found this book can create a bridge between the business people and the design people. And if you fill out his business model canvas for your company, you'll start to see how the entire thing is an ecosystem and how choices affect everything. You have to actually understand how your company makes money. Otherwise, you can't have a reasonable conversation with anybody else in the company. You need to map your world. So this is Paula Scheer. I'm sorry, it's a little bit lightweight, but she actually did maps of how record covers were approved. And this is sort of terrifyingly complicated, right? This is the CBS records. And here's another one for CBS Records. So she actually figured out all the politics that it would take to get her art actually on an album cover. Do you understand this for your company? Do you know all the mysteries? Like who has the final approval? Who influences who? Who has power over who? This is a map well worth designing so that you can understand all this randomness. There are group dynamics. Is there one group that just hates another group? Is there one group that just won't work with another group? Those politics are real, and you can't ignore them. As well, there is a rhythm to asking for a raise, and every company has one. Do you know when your fiscal year starts and ends? Do you know when there's opportunities to get an out-of-cycle raise? For a little while, I was able to get promoted every 6 months. And that's a pretty nice thing to be able to pull off. And part of that was understanding that there's a window of opportunity every 6 months if you can make an argument for the value you've created for your company and for an out-of-cycle raise. These are the tricks that you want to know about how your company works. So the model starts to come together. Like, I now have enough knowledge to go forward, right? I know myself. I understand my boss. We kind of know how we stand. We understand each other. We have shared experiences. We know the forces that are acting on us. Now we can have a conversation. We've done all this work so we can actually start talking to each other. So the first thing that comes in is when you walk into the room is body language, right? So I was looking for a life coach, and I interviewed 2 different coaches. And this is a quick sketch of the 2 coaches. Now, you can probably guess which one I ended up hiring. It was really extraordinary. I couldn't believe I was talking to somebody who was a life coach, and he was literally turned side to me, closed up, and talking to me like this. And I'm like, you're going to give me advice about how I run my life and my business? I don't think so. And then my other one was like, she was sprawled. She was comfortable. She didn't need me to hire her. But if we liked each other, she was going to be there. She was going to be open. She was going to be a relaxing force. And I've been with her for 2 years now. She's extraordinary. So, your body is always telling a story about you. So this is from Amy Cuddy's research on power poses. And I got to say, not only is your body telling a story about you, but your body's telling a story to you. Strangely enough, when you start doing this, you increase your stress chemicals and you decrease the testosterone. They'll give you strength. So actually, just for fun, let's all Wonder Woman for 30 seconds. Do you know how to Wonder Woman? Everybody stand up and pull a Linda Carter. Let's do it. Well, our superheroes, we might as well look like them. Ready? Maybe just 3 big breaths. Yay! I know this seems silly, but you know what? Your body just produced a ton of powerful chemicals that make you feel invigorated, strong, powerful, amazing. It works. This is science, people. Something I'll never explain to my mother. But this is... I'm sorry, Mom. I know this is videoed. I'm going to catch hell for this. So when you walk in to talk to your boss, read him. Read your boss. What's interesting about this picture is he may look open, his arms are out, but that's actually a power pose. He's owning his space. However, his legs are saying he's not all that interested in what you have to say. He's going to be a hard one to talk to, although the face may have been a clue as well. But it's a read-write, actually. We have these things called mirror neurons in our brain, and if we physically go in with an open body, leaning forward, interested, we can watch the changes on our boss. So when I first started working at MySpace, I was reading all this stuff on body language, and I thought, how fun would it be to run an experiment? So this is really hard to do with so many mics, but I did some of the silliest power poses in the executive meetings. I did this one. Like I did all the Obama tenting. And once again, I got promoted without actually having accomplished anything quite yet. My numbers did eventually follow my power poses, but it's funny to think about, why not play? Why not try it out? Why not in the next meeting, like physically send a message that you are comfortable and strong and wait for your chemicals to catch up with you? I also suggest that you change the tone. So a lot of times when I give coaching advice, I hear a lot of designers go, how do I get promoted? I'll tell them if I do this, like if I get this project to go well, or if I do this. They're looking for hoops to jump through. It's a very transactional relationship. And I recommend moving away from this transactional, if you do this, I'll do this. If you give me a raise, I'll do this. And move towards a collaborative relationship. And by that is, instead of talking about, if I do this, will you give me a cookie? Say, okay, how are we going to accomplish this big project that we both share? How can we both make this thing happen? And after it's happened, when you're celebrating the triumph and you're all sitting back in your power pose, you can then say, that was amazing. I think it might be time to talk about, my situation. Maybe it's, I believe I may have earned a raise, at the point where you've already collaboratively done it. And in fact, if you're lucky, it'll just show up for you. But if it doesn't, you ask for it. Pick your words. Okay, so speaking the language of business, I find generally sort of useless, like going around saying, I went and I read an HBR and ROI, blah, blah, blah. But listening to the language that's actually spoken at your company is a different story. So I'm from the Silicon Valley, as I may have mentioned. And in the Silicon Valley, we say things like, it's more about the package. Like somebody will say, what raise? How much money do you want? What's your salary? And instead of saying, I want $175,000, I can say my last salary was $175,000, but it's more about the package. And the reason we talk about package in the Silicon Valley is because we have stocks, we have RSUs, we have health insurance. It's a way of saying, I'm going to look at the whole thing all together, but it's also a way to not name a number and let them try to put something together. When you go and you want to raise, you don't say, I think I deserve $10,000 more a year. You say, how do I get to the next level? That's another language that I hear in the companies that I have worked at historically. And getting to the next level can mean lots of things, and you and your boss can talk about what that is. Is it about a promotion? Is it about a title? Is it about more responsibility? Is it about money? This is just a language I know. Your company will have its own language. The biggest thing is this comes from Nonviolent Communication, which I really, really love. It's an amazing philosophy for conversation. But you want to speak need to need. You have needs, which you've defined. You have your salary you need to make. You have the life you wish to live. You have the kind of work you need to do. And they have needs. They also have salary needs. They have success needs. And if you speak from need to need, you can find a common ground where you can both succeed. So the model is know yourself, know the other, know the territory, know the climate. Most of all, make an us. Can you make an us? And that's the hardest question of all. And you know what? If all else fails, sometimes you have to quit. You know, some things just won't change. And I'm very sorry to say that I hear a lot from folks that say, you know, how do I make them? How do I make them listen to me? How do I make them promote me? How do I make them collaborate with me? And the reality is you can't make anybody do anything. It's really funny. One of my teams at the school I teach at, there's a 3-person team, and 2 of them are like, how do we make him do what we want? I was like, he's your friend. Have you ever done anything you want? You know, there's something in us that just wants that easy silver bullet, and it doesn't exist. So first, we try to be humans with each other, but there's a point where we really do just have to walk away and find some place that's a better fit, and it's a reality. The other thing is you can't negotiate if you're scared to walk away. If you're terrified of losing your job, you can't ask for a raise. You can't ask for a promotion. In fact, once again, fear not only kills your ability to listen, it kills your ability to think. So until you're good with walking away, you cannot negotiate. So I want to give you some homework as the day goes on. I want you to make a sentence about you're awesome and share it. Like, go out. Next time you meet somebody out in the coffee area and somebody says, who are you? Tell them, I'm a person who makes sense out of data and helps other people understand the value of it, helps accountants understand why content marketing is hard. Discover what other people's awesome are. What are the questions that might lead you to understand what this other person's superpower is? I go to a lot of networking events, and I find that just being genuinely curious about everybody I meet is a great way to make friends and make my life awesome, actually. And there's some nice networking things that accidentally come out of that, too. Plot something together. Could this new person help you start a company? Could they join your company? Could they start a magazine? Could they start a institute for information architecture? Could they start the next World IA Day? Like, who is this person your next, partner in evil, right? So, I'm sorry I ran a little short, but we can have a long conversation about it. But thank you. I do coach individuals and teams, and I do have a couple books. Well, one book out, and the other book will be out this month, I pray. Okay? So thank you very much, and let's talk about what we just talked about. So I'm hoping there's lots of questions, and we can have a pretty vigorous conversation. Yeah, let's get
I have the mic. So
oh, yay! We have a mic runner.
I can pass this around. Amy, raise your hand. I will throw it.
I can stay in a power position. Okay. But it's warm in here.
I also have jokes, so someone should probably ask a question instead.
I know there's questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk more about negotiation for hours. Questions? Nobody here wants a raise?
Hi.
Hi.
I am wondering, and this is a region-specific question, and something that drives me absolutely bonkers. In the DC area, no, not about the government. In the DC area, you meet someone, and you get a title, and you get a company. That's not how I define people. And I do my best in conversations to steer it to what do you do, like what are your interests, trying to find common ground to have a conversation. So it's very interesting you're saying, speak what you do and talk about what you're awesome about. Any, I guess, DC specific advice to continue that conversation and make people kind of help people think of themselves that way instead of thinking themselves as a title?
Definitely. So it's interesting because this is not DC, I think. I mean, in the Silicon Valley, everybody wants to know what you're good for. And so I'll go to these networking events and they'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, as little as possible. And it's really funny because I can see a look in their face where they're like, and I think I realized the other day that most of them are going, oh, she's a wife. I'll go find somebody who actually has value, which is sort of upsetting on 15 different levels. But some people will come back and talk to me. And the people are like, whoa, that's really interesting. What does that mean? How did you come to that theory? And those people are really wonderful to talk to. So there's another trick from NVC, which is, and it's a very daring question, which is when you meet somebody, you can ask them, what increases your joy? You know, that's a crazy question. That's very daring, but it throws people. They're all ready to say, I'm the senior VP of blah, blah, blah. I'm very important. And suddenly they're asked to be a human. Another question can be, you know, what made you laugh recently? You could ask them all sorts of questions about that. You know, what do you do when you aren't working? If you want to do something a little safer, you know? How do you like to spend your time is a really safe and interesting way to do it. How do you like to spend your time? They have to think for a second. Is it their work that's really bringing them joy? Or is there something else they'd love to spend their time on? How do you like to spend your time is a very safe way to do it. I think anytime you can get people out of name, rank, and serial number, automaticness, you're getting people to be humans with you. And so that's the struggle. So I would say start testing it. Like, you're going to go up and try to meet 5 people during the break and ask them, try them all out. Try, you know, and everybody's heard the talk, so hopefully they'll respond with their heart. But ask them, you know, what brings you joy? How do you like to spend your time? What made you laugh recently? Try all those questions and see what happened. Now everybody has prepared answers, but at least you'll get to practice in a safe place. What brought you here today is not bad. It's just there are some facile answers to that. I like things that don't really have a facile answer, if you know what I mean. What brought you here today? I saw it on Eventbrite, which is unfortunate.
I have a question back here.
Okay, and Steve has a question too.
So the superhero thing, figuring out your superpower, all of this, we're talking about it very personally in your presentation. But
blah, blah, blah.
But we as advocates for information architecture and for UX, how can we, I'm sure there's some obvious things, but how do we then take that and advocate for our profession in the same way, as opposed to just saying, you need information architecture, or, you know, just coming in and selling a service? How do we take this and then incorporate the larger organization and culture?
What is information architecture's superpower? Don't define it. What is it? What is it? Can anybody say what it is? Like, why is it awesome? Sorry?
Listening.
Okay. What makes it awesome?
It brings order out of chaos.
It brings order out of chaos. But what does that mean to my bottom line?
It's much easier to make money if you're organized.
It's easier to make money if you're organized. What else do we got? What else makes IA awesome?
It empowers people to accomplish their goals.
People can actually get stuff done? That's fantastic. Any other theories? Okay. You can mic run out back there.
It helps people find what they want quickly.
Find what they want quickly. So I bring this up just because I think with information architecture or design or interaction design or UX or what have you, we have a tendency to do 2 things. We say, I have a thing, don't you want my thing? It's like the vacuum cleaner salesman coming to the door, right? Hey, vacuum cleaner. And I'm like, I've got a perfectly decent broom, thank you very much. So if you change the conversation to, you know, all those little bits in the corner that are all dusty and annoying, we can make them go away instead of pushing them around. It's a better conversation. It's a more meaningful conversation. Should we define it? Only if it sells it. Instead, talking about the superpower of information architecture is a better thing. And we can specialize that message as we talk to people. You know, is it a giant information system? People need to be able to find things. People need to organize things. Is it a team of content creators? We need to be able to allow people to get things done. It takes them forever because they have to re-enter it 14 times. You know, talk in a human language about real benefits that are contextual to the people that you have taken the time to understand. It's the same thing, whether you're selling your own awesome or whether you're selling your particular flavor of snake oil, or in this case, a genuine penicillin, which is mold, you know. Where'd penicillin go if I'm like, I got some mold to sell you? Come on. So let's try to find a language for it. You want to build on the next question?
Yeah, I was just going to build on it. I was just going to say that. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that the I think a lot of things about structure out of order and all this is great, but I mean ultimately it's what is your problem that you need solved? You know, because if we don't know what their problem is, it is just selling snake oil. It's going up and saying, I'll pave your driveway for you for this afternoon for $200. Maybe they need it, but maybe they don't. It's not bad, but maybe that's not what they really need right now. And I think that's key, is finding out what is it exactly they need to solve. What are their problems? Is their product not as good as another one because of something else? Are they having overhead issues because they have too many administrators trying to make it work? Is it slow? Do people not want to use it? Whatever it is, that's the focus, is what the problem is. And then you use all these tools from IA design, whatever, to focus on those problems and to solve those problems and demonstrate how these things will and can solve those problems.
Absolutely. So. And I think that part of that journey is turning a they into a person. So we say things like, makes the complex clear. That was the Hot Studio motto. Maria Jadis was a Richard Saul Wurman IA. And that was her motto, make the complex clear, which is pretty accessible. But when she'd go and talk to, the big clients, like, say, a Schwab, she would say, you have a lot of banking plans, and people look at it and they run away, and they don't know what to do. And so we're going to use information architecture so that ordinary people can figure out what plan to use and pick it with you, and that came from understanding what their particular needs are. So definitely speaking to that. He has a question, and then we'll go here. Okay.
So I'm going to go back to the person-to-person part, which I think was the first question that came up, if I may. And so you're talking, these are great things about talking to strangers, basically, sort of the meeting people part. And I was at the Interactions conference. I don't know if anybody else was there besides Christina. Huge, overwhelming amounts of people, many friends, contacts, people that I only spend time with on social media that were excited to see each other, and many of us are introverts, and so we run into each other at the salad buffet or whatever the heck it was, and say this, so how's it going? Or this one, like, what's new? And just, the deer in the headlights that we were giving each other, like, and I'm not sure I would say, hey, Marianne, how's it going? What's your superpower? Like, there's a set of questions that I think are like the ones that you're giving, but are maybe for how to talk to somebody that you already know. I don't know. Do you see that as a separate class, or any suggestions on like how to unlock those re-meets?
I think there's some similarities in some of the language. For example, Amy Jo Kim, who's an amazing woman I know, every night at dinner, everybody goes around and they share an awesome moment that happened. And sometimes when I run into people, I'll say, what's the last awesome thing you saw? Especially at a conference. Then it's really easy I can always say, what is something extraordinary that you saw? Or what's something that touched you? Because I know them and I can actually ask more intimate questions that way. But I find that sharing joy reconnects you heart to heart. So I tend to ask questions like that. Or, has anything made you laugh recently? If it's that kind of person, some people are always laughing at things. If I ran into you, Steve, as I so often do, I might say, how are your drawings going? Has any of your drawings like really lit up? How's that progressing? But if I haven't seen you in so long, I've lost track of what you're up to. Then I might just ask, what's the last awesome thing that you saw? That's such an easy question. Awesome's colloquial. Nobody's freaked out by it. I'm not asking you to open up your heart and bleed, but because this can get a little touchy-feely. But I find that's a really easy one. What's the last awesome thing that happened? What's the last awesome thing that you saw? Has anything magical happened lately? Depending on if I'm talking to my game design nerd friends, because they're willing to talk about magical events. But I like jumping to the heart, and everybody has had something lovely happen recently, or they have the face, which means nothing lovely has happened. At which point I can go, oh, gosh, it looks like you're going through something tough. Do you want to share? If they've got nothing lovely happening, maybe you can just be there for them. But so far, it's working.
Thank you.
Good question, though.
I have a question about internal conversations within an organization.
I thought you meant within myself, because I can talk about those. No, I really can.
That's another hour, for me at least. But so a lot of these conversations I'm hearing about are when you're coming in from the outside as a consultant to sell IA, or you're running into other people at a conference or what have you. But when you're in the organization and you want to get a seat at the table to get the people who are making decisions about staffing and project plans and that sort of thing, to work UX more into the equation before it's too late. Do you have any suggestions about how to get the seat at the table? Because those people don't necessarily understand what we do, except at the most superficial level.
So it's always too late already. So you can stop worrying about time, because we're always already doomed, and there's already opportunity for something else good to happen. And if you're internal, you're going to play the long game. It just is. If you are internal, you can have more impact, and it will take longer. So you actually have to be patient. So then the next thing is, okay, I'm playing the long game. Who has seats at the table? Okay, so who's at that table already? Mm-hmm. And then the next question becomes, who will benefit from what I bring to the table? And by I mean the we, the royal I guess. So you want to go ahead and say, okay, who at that table will have their life improved by UX, IA, whatever? And then you have coffee, and you sit down, and you just listen. I will tell you something. You know who the most fascinating person in the world is? The person who doesn't say a word. The person who gets you to talk. So you take them out for coffee, and you say, I just want to know more about what you do and figure out if I can help. So tell me, what do you do? How does that work? What gets in your way? Like, spend time, and you will just become this person they want to spend time with. And it's one of those tricks. This is like my best interview trick as well, is when I interview for a job, I started playing this little game, was like, can I tell them nothing about myself? Can I just find out everything about them? And every time I play this little game, it changes how you think about an interview, right? Interviews are supposed to find out if I'm worth hiring. Oh, no. I just listen. And every time I've played this game, I get asked back or I get a job offer, because I'm the most fascinating person in the world. And I know Steve knows getting me to shut up is probably an impressive trick, but I do know how to do it when it's required. So you're building slow. So there's that person. And you'll find out, who else should I talk to? Always ask that question. Who else should I talk to? And then you have coffee with them. And then you start building up a game plan. Okay, I've got a bunch of people who know I listen, know I care. Then you start doing a small win. The book, The First 90 Days, is a terrific book. But you know what? It's never too late to have a first 90 days, even if you've been there for 2 years. It's all about getting that first win, building trust, building up enough trust that you can move to the bigger wins. So it's the long game. You have to be patient. But I would guess that within 6 months to a year, you can start having genuine, real effects, depending on how slow your company works. In faster companies, you can do it in 90 days. In slower companies, 6 months to a year. But you can start changing the conversation, because you're invaluable. You understand. You listen. You know how it works. And you bring something to the table. But yeah, it's a slow game. There's no flip.
Yeah, can I just build on that a little bit? Another thing I would say I've done a lot, which has been really successful, is what I call guerrilla design, which is, working in organizations where there's slow change. It's hard to get that seat at the table. It's hard to get that coffee or whatever. Or there's just political forces working against you, budgetary forces, whatever they might be. What I tend to do is I build a concept of something. It could be a visual design. It could be a prototype, a working prototype. I just build something on my own that would be an example of how I would make that better. And then I leak it. Literally leak it. Sometimes I've left a piece of paper on someone's chair that could say yes. And before you know it, if it's good, let's assume it's good,
it explains itself.
It explains itself. It's just an example. They're going to look at it. People are going to start saying, where did this come from? Who's designed this? Or more importantly, who's building this right now? Are we making this? And when they want something that only you can make, then you're in the driver's seat to tell them how it can be made. And you can say, okay, if you want it, here's what we need. I need to be involved at this stage. I need this kind of technology, or I need these tools, or we have to change the process in this way so that I can do this properly. And it works. I've done it for Arlington County. I worked there 5 years. It's a very traditional government, and I did that tactic. Sometimes people get a little annoyed. You might step on the wrong toe, or they'd say, "Hey, no one said we're building this. Don't do that." But you have to be careful. But if you do it right, you can really quickly and in a short time shortcut that long process in some ways, and get people to say, "Hey, we want this now."
So it is, as you say, it can be a dangerous strategy, and it's something that you can't do everywhere. There are times if you haven't mapped your political organization, you can actually cause schisms and get your boss in trouble, and getting your boss in trouble is something that will not benefit you in the long run. So it's a very dangerous tactic. unless you know your space extraordinarily well, at which point it can be a very effective tactic. There's a moderated version that I've seen work by, for example, my friend Uday at Cloud Physics. What he did is he ended up making all these beautiful models of the customers and hanging them on the walls. And it turns out the customers weren't very present, right? Because in people's minds, they go out and talk to them, but then you forget about them. And by starting to put these things on the walls, people would find themselves having conversations in the halls, so they could go, oh yeah, and remember this, we were talking to this guy, or this, remember this is our persona, this is our core. And so his value as understanding people was slowly leaking upwards. So that's a quieter way of doing it, taking something that already exists, but putting it into the world the way we can hear it. And then you could tack on a few things that the users would like, you know, once again, keeping it in a safe space. So that's another way to do it. The other thing is if you can't get a coffee, you can always just ask for 10 minutes just to better understand how I can help you. You can always ask for a smaller ask as well. But I think that's a bold strategy, but you have to use it cautiously. And so there's moderated versions. But I think if you're inside of a company going slow, I think if you're a consultant, you don't have the luxury of going slow, so you have to, sometimes you have to play really bold cards. Yes?
Hey, Lisa. I'm John Whalen here. I want to say one more thing about that. So when you're having that coffee, I feel like, so Steve was interesting. He said, you know, hey, you know, you didn't want to have people instantly open up. You wanted some sort of way to break the ice a little bit. And I felt like if you ask that person, you know, well, where are you trying to get the company in the next few years? What's going to happen? You know, what would you like ideally? Well, gosh, why isn't it like that now? Mm-hmm. Huh? You know, and then you start to say, okay, well, yeah, I you know, maybe these things could help too. Would have, you know, why haven't those worked yet? And so I feel like there can be ways that you can find both what they're looking for, and they say, hey, damn it was her that slowed it down, and then you start to understand the politics, and then you also, well, what does Kelly want, you know? And then you start to learn about that as well, and then you can talk to Kelly and know already what she might be interested in, and start to get a little bit of a feel for that too. So you start to get all those people and what they're interested in, and try to see how you can make what you have that value that they're looking for.
You know, thank you, because that's such a good example of what I meant by we have skills. We have all these amazing skills. We go out and interview users all the time. Why would we not apply it to our own company, right? Like, why not actually build a script? You know, you could just put it inside your Moleskine, but, you know, to refer back to as opposed to having a formal thing, and you don't have to warn them that they're not being recorded and the recordings are only used for internal. Anyway, but but it's user research, right? It's something that we all should have at least a smattering of, and using it within our company is very powerful. And to be honest, as far as I can tell, everybody in the world is desperate to be listened to and really, really listened to. And that's a gift that we should be giving all the time. Oh, we got, and she had her hand up too, so after that, go straight. Okay, or I can do it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say, for the internal person, I think it's valuable to remind people that you're a resource, that you're part of a larger field, the field of IA, UX. If you go to a conference like this or another one, and I would encourage you to keep doing that, come back and share what you heard so that people are learning from you, and they're also like, hey, that person is an expert, a trustworthy source. We should really listen to her and tap her for different projects. I think it's funny. So I spent 10 years working within organizations and 10 years consulting. And it's kind of a sad truth, I think, that someone from the outside, a consultant, can come in 10 minutes say the same thing that an internal person has been saying for 5 years, and the people will listen to the external person. Just because, you know, you've come from the outside world and you haven't been lost in the organization. So don't allow yourself to, you know, be overlooked because you're part of the organization. Remind people that you exist in a larger world.
Well, I think that's I think coming back and giving back is always a tremendously good strategy. I think there's another thing we always say: why was that outside person listened to? Sometimes I think it's for a reason that we don't remember, which is they were brought in when the person was ready to listen, you know? And so when we hire an outside person, they couldn't hear us because they were worried about other things. We were going blah, 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 and they're like, I don't know, I'm worried about this flow over here. And we were like, no, it's the top of the funnel. And they're like, we got to fix the flow. But when they are finally ready to talk about the top of the funnel, when they're ready to talk about that homepage, we should be there ready for them because we're listening. And I think that anytime we think of a strategy that's about talking rather than listening, we should re-examine that strategy and make sure it's a complete strategy with talking and listening. And it's all about the and. I think the strategy of bringing back is invaluable because that means your face is in front of them when they don't necessarily see you, which is really always a good strategy. But I think there's an and there, definitely an and. Talk and listen, both. Okay, you have a question you're desperate to give? Let's hear it.
Oh, sure. So let's say you are a designer who's strategic, and then you have strategic ideas that someone else was supposed to have. Let's say, you know, you're more strategic than a product manager or an executive, and they get mad. So how do you...
Well, I'd ask, why are they mad? Are they mad because you're smarter? Are they mad because you spoke up in a meeting where they weren't ready? Were they unprepared? Sometimes people get angry because they just weren't ready to have this idea put out. So sometimes it's a matter... By the way, I should have mentioned this earlier. Buy the book, Difficult Conversations. My God, that book is insanely awesome. And it's really good about thinking about the ways that people can't hear you. So yes, you probably are going to be more strategic than some people you're working with. And definitely, it's often a product manager. But the secret of product managers is if you don't worry about getting credit, let them take credit and just give it to them. And over time, trust me, people will find out, or you'll find ways to make sure that the credit eventually does come back to you, but build that relationship. You can partner with somebody in which you both succeed together, and that's a really good approach. So if you're strategic, they're not strategic, but they're supposed to be strategic, you can set up a friendly partnership where you can move forward. But it's really hard to know because I don't know this person. Like, there's a whole story behind this person. This person's in a job they're not comfortable with. This person's getting yelled at by their boss. This person has their own struggles. When I worked at Yahoo, I had this big team that came from a reorg, right? So all of a sudden I had 45 designers who hadn't really worked with each other, so I had them all sit with me, and they all sat together. And then after we've been together for 6 months, I put them into their business units, and they started to sit with their business units. And I remember this one designer, she would always come to me when we were all sitting together and go, my God, this product manager keeps bugging me every 5 minutes for this thing. They're so annoying. They don't get it. Why aren't they thinking about the big picture? Why do they want this mock? And after sitting next door to this product manager for a month, she came over and went, oh my God, this product manager's life is hell. His boss asks her for stuff every 10 minutes. She's like getting yelled at by salespeople. Like all of a sudden everything changed because she saw into that world. So I think there's like multiple pieces. One is, yes, you have powers they don't have. That's why we have the Super Friends teams. Can you make a team with them? Can you find out what their struggles are? Can you partner with them? And of course, sometimes they're just a pinhead, at which point you walk away. But you want to evaluate that first. People are rarely that bad.
Yeah, I mean, the sales team comes to me every 10 minutes as well, so I understand.
So it's interesting to find out why that is and what's going on with that and start to have a negotiation. Like, is it because other designers never get anything done on time unless they're bugged every 10 minutes, you know? Find out, like, why do you come to me every 10 minutes, and is there something else we can do? But everybody's got their own story, so. But it's not a game to see who gets to be the most strategic, luckily, although in some companies it becomes that. So see if you can change the game and make a team. That's my best advice. How are we on time? Okay. We'll take a couple more questions, or we will end early for cake. I assume there's cake somewhere. She's like, Nikki's like, there is no cake. Come on, Christina, keep talking. Fruit. What insane place have I come to? Snow and no cake? Any other questions? I had to bring up cake, didn't I? Okay.
One thing about when you're talking salaries and you're talking when you're talking about need and salaries and what we need, and everyone to calculate that. I've spoken to a lot of recruiters over the years, a lot of employers and stuff. And in this area particularly, I'm not familiar with outside this area, but certainly in this area, every recruiter already has a number in their head. Yep. They all have the same number, by the way. Every single one of them has the same exact number in their head. I know it. I can tell them the number. They all know the number. It's in this area, it's $130,000, by the way. Is senior level UX designer, IA, whatever. That is the number.
And no cake.
And no cake. So there's no point in discussing, when you talk to recruiters, when you're talking to people like that, they all have the same script they're reading from. They all know as much or as little about you. They all know what the number is, and they're all hoping, of course, for you to say a number that's less or much less. And of course, as everyone will tell you in business, the moment you say what a number is, that's about the best you'll probably get or close to it. So when you were talking about how you kind of have ways in the valley to talk about the whole package or whatever, what I've tended to do is not get into a discussion of that because it's never going to probably be a good discussion. Particularly if you're just talking to a recruiter anyway, because what they'll do is they're going to take whatever your lowest number is, they're going to pass that on to the employer, and the employer is going to actually hear something different. They're going to hear, that's what that person wants, not that's what I'll get. And if you ever say what you made last time, that's just as bad. Who cares? I always say it's really irrelevant what I made last time. What are they willing to pay for the right person for that job? It doesn't matter if I made $10 last year or $10 million. What matters is, what is your customer willing, or if it's an actual employer, what are they willing to pay for the right person for that position? What is the most they're willing to pay? And sometimes they won't tell you, but I never start playing that game of salary because it's a losing sum. I know the number, they know the number, everyone knows how it's going to work, and you're not going to get anywhere. Well, you'll never get beyond that number if you do that. And if any of you are in a position to try to go beyond that number or at that number or beyond that number, you're not going to get anything out of it. So it doesn't really make sense. I prefer to talk about what's the value of the job. It's irrelevant. If I'm the right person, what would you pay for that?
But the recruiter, of course, does not know that. I think part of the secret is trying to get past the recruiter and talk to the person who's actually the hiring manager as quickly as possible.
Sure, but if you can have that, if you can skip that and not leave that hiring manager with a number that they're going to assume is, you'll take that if we offer that to you. Mm-hmm. That's, I think, the important point is to not get caught up in that, to talk in some, I don't know about the package, because many of these don't have packages in that same sense. But
although there is, my friend Erin Malone just recently told me something that I was really surprised by. I hope I'm not outing her by saying this, but it turns out that almost all hiring managers can give you 1 more week of vacation. I was like, I didn't know that. That's fascinating. I will always ask for 1 more week of vacation. So there is a kind of package. It doesn't involve stocks, but it does involve health insurance. It does involve vacation. It does involve hours. But you can't negotiate unless you know what you care about. Right. So if you know, I think going into a salary negotiation, going, how can I get the most money, is a limited mindset. I like, how can I get the most money, and what else can I move around? But that comes out of knowing. So if push comes to shove, what's the lowest I can accept? What are people getting paid in the area? What's the high end? But also have them name a number first. That's like an old school trick, but it's a good one. Like, try not to name a number. Say, I have a salary history, but I'm really looking for a change here. What's the number you're thinking of? Like you said. So a lot, I think thinking about more than the salary is part of the puzzle. You have to think about that entire picture. And for me, I would give up money to be able to have more time off. No,
my last job I did exactly. I got another week of vacation as part of the deal.
Isn't that amazing?
And I just demanded. I said, I need another week.
I thought I saw a hand, but I could be. Yeah, there's a couple hands over there. Wow, there's a bunch of hands.
Hello? Okay. So I am a student right now at the University of Baltimore. And
breathe deeply.
Okay.
Okay, excellent.
So I am currently in HR, and I am a grad student in the IDIA program. So I'm wondering if you have any tips into how someone can break into this field. Like, I know I'm going to school, but how can I move towards, having the company go, oh, we're going to take a chance on you.
So you want to be an IA of HR, or I'm just confused.
Well, no. Well, I'm saying I am in HR right now.
Oh, okay.
So
and you're going to school and you're getting an IA background.
Yes,
I
am.
I got it.
Yeah.
So how do you, I'd love to hear a couple other ideas as well. But what I find in general is you get jobs through humans, and so you have. Okay, I want to ask every single person in this room to go up and introduce yourself. Stand up for a second. Wave to everybody.
Oh.
Stand up and wave.
Me?
Okay, everybody, see this beautiful woman here? She cares about IA. You're in this room because you care about IA. Please meet her, talk about her passions, find out what she's awesome at, and start looking for a great job for her to go in. That's what you do, except in the future, you don't have the keynote make you stand up. You're gonna go to meetups and you're gonna talk about what you care about and why it's important and how you think things could get better. And you're gonna connect person to person and say, and I'm going to be looking for a job in blah, blah. I'm gonna start looking in March, April. Can I give you a call and do an informational interview? By the way, the power of informational interviews is really underrated. Like when I was thinking about changing jobs from a web dev, I coded HTML and I started doing informational interviews with people who ran user experience firms, except they weren't called that, and user research firms. And you could just write and say, I'm a student, I'm thinking about going into this career, can I have coffee with you? And pretty much people will do that. And then you have a connection and you'd be surprised how many of those do eventually lead to jobs. But you want to build your network now. Start building that network of relationships now. And that's how you get in. People take a chance on you because they know you're smart, they know you're lovely, they know you're terrific, and they know you're studying hard. A cold interview is a hard way to go into the world. Don't do the thing where you print it on fancy paper with a great font. It's much better to have an emotional relationship with people already. Oh, I know. Although a nice font is always a good idea.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could talk more about the vacation and how do you negotiate things like that? Because I feel like when I get a job offer, I just freak out and I just sign it. So I really want to know, how do you start conversations like that in a way that's not aggressive?
Well, I have bad news for you. You're a woman, and everybody thinks everything you do is aggressive. Sorry, that was a very bitter comment. I have to go to the bathroom. My God, she's pushy. The reality is, okay, did you ever watch WKRP in Cincinnati? Okay, so there was a character on there, and he was a sales guy, and his name was Herb Tarlick, and he wore a plaid jacket, and he had a white belt, and he had no skills, and he was selling the worst radio station in Cincinnati. But damn it, he went out there and asked. And so when I was first starting out, and I was scared of asking, I would pretend I was Herb Tarlick, and I'd be like, okay, I'm just gonna go out and sell whatever I got as hard as I can. And it kind of worked for me. And I don't know who you can visualize yourself as. Maybe you can be Sheryl Sandberg, she dresses better. But go out and think about it. So you have done your homework, right? You know how much money you need, you know what you want vacation. Knowing what those knobs are is really valuable. Like find some manager, maybe in this room, and say, what are all the knobs you can turn? She used to be in HR. I bet you guys can make a really good relationship because I bet she knows all the things that can be negotiated. But find out what those knobs are and then go in promising yourself. Maybe write it down so you hold it on a piece of paper so you remember. And you go in, and as soon as the conversation comes up, and the conversation starts like this. So what's your salary history? At which point you want to immediately change the conversation. You can say, I'm looking to improve from the past. I'd like to know all the pieces of the puzzle, or what the package is. I'd like to know about health insurance. I'd like to know about standard vacation. And I'd like to know what salary range you're talking about to see if it matches what I'm thinking about. Try to get them to name the number first, but get them to lay everything out. And don't just go, when they're talking about health insurance. Like, is it a PPO? Is it an HMO? Are you going to be stuck going to Kaiser? Is that a bummer? Find out everything and treat everything as negotiable and go in. But you kind of have to know, like, what do I care about? Like, I really do want a PPO. I do not want an HMO, period. I want more vacation. It's what I care about. Money, I can go a lot of different directions. I want meaning. I want to work with people I actually like. Start by laying out what you want and then go in and treat everything as negotiable except the people and the company's values. Never work at a company that doesn't have the same values as you. Quick follow-up? Yeah, if you have advice. Steve is smarter than me, so I like it when
well, you said something that I want to link back to it, because I think you described that moment of quoting your hourly rate that you gave the giggle, right? And I think that moment where you say something because you know it's what you need to say, but it feels completely wrong to you, like that is a leap across a chasm right? To go in and not just sign the job offer, but to reframe the conversation, to redirect, to have that stuff written down. It's what you said before about kind of being good with yourself. I think going into that conversation, acknowledging like, I don't want to do this, I just want to sign it. You have to kind of like pinch your nose and jump into the water and say, no, it's $2.50 an hour. It's not, and not. And I think we approach a lot of these interactions very authentic. We want to just be comfortable and say like, yeah, sure, that's great, thank you, I'm happy to have this job. And I think part of the things we're all talking about here is sort of choosing an other, kind of fake it till you make it kind of thing, and just acknowledging like that's gonna suck for a moment, and maybe you want to practice it, or maybe you want to just think of Christina giggling as she says something that's like, do it again. I'm sorry. Right. It is so painful, all these negotiation moments where we have to act as the outside our comfort zone, and probably a lot of us live it every day. And I think just owning that moment and acknowledging that it's a painful moment, like for me, that helps.
There is no worse moment than going in and they say 2 weeks of vacation. You're like, is that normal? Should I say yes? Was that a good deal? Like taking the time to have the research ahead of time, what Steve's talking about, and knowing what you want that preparation is invaluable all the time. So, and then yes, getting comfortable actually saying, yeah, I was thinking about a 175 to 200K range. Look at you, just blinked. You went, I can do that? So yeah, practicing to do it without the giggle is really important.
Oh, I was just going to add on to that. I just recently did something a little bit ballsy, brassy, and a little sassy. To that question.
Like it. Can you put that on your business card?
Ballsy, brassy. Yes, I could actually. I just might. I was asked that question, so what are you expecting to make? And I said, well, that's a little bit personal. Don't you think you should get to know me better first? And they kind of went, I said, okay, let's go move on.
Oh, my goodness. You'll have to buy me a drink first before I give you my salary range.
So I'm your resident psychologist, and so we want this to be a framing problem. So when I was interviewing to be a professor, I would go to the provost, who is affectionately known as the Count de Money, and I'd say, I could ask, and so to your point about having something silly that feels silly to you, I could ask you for a big building with an MRI machine and $10 million, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to ask for this. And so if you can say that first thing, I could ask for a salary of like $400,000, and you'd probably laugh at me, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to ask for the 225, not 200. And so, anyway, if you can frame it a little bit to like, well, I could ask for this, and like, okay, well, that's crazy, I know too. And then something a little lower, but that actually is what you're really shooting for, then you can say the silly thing, you can all laugh about the silliness, and then get down to the tough stuff.
I have to say, when people have just like flatly made me name the first number, I always name the silly number, and then I say, but it's really about the package. In other words, here's my $200,000 a year, but I'm willing to, let's talk about what else is on the table. So it sets things in motion. So that's actually a really good, setting expectations, ridiculous, and then being willing to negotiate from there, because you do always have to follow it with a negotiation piece for sure. I think that's great advice. So we are wrapped up. I want to thank you guys. Rather than a keynote, I felt like we had a keynote conversation, which was really wonderful, and thank all of you for bringing your wisdom and superpowers and insights. So I want applause for everybody.